All right. Hello, everybody. It's Michelle Mahar here, and I'm here today with Shauna Arnott. Thank you so much, Shauna, for giving me your time to talk to me today about these challenging times we're going through right now and how to keep positive while getting creative and pivoting in your business now and going forward as well.
No,
Thank you, Shauna.
yeah, thank you for having me, Michelle. I love to chat with you, and I'm happy to share with the community.
Well, thank you. So if you want to just give us a bit about who you are.
Sure. I am the founder of Haste and Hustle and Leverage Events, and I've been in the events industry for about 10 years now. Oh my gosh, it seems like just yesterday. I own a company where we plan events for corporate clients. We do incentive trips and all sorts of corporate events, conferences, and whatnot. And then I also plan and produce Haste and Hustle, which is a large conference for entrepreneurs. And that's sort of my passion project. And it certainly turned into a very large passion project, but I get very excited about the group that we're serving. And yeah, and I'm live in Canada, and I'm sort of facing the current pandemic, just like all of you, with all the uncertainty that's involved. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about what I do. Yeah, that's it.
Yes. So Haste and Hustle is where I first met you. The first that event where you brought Gary Vaynerchuk out to Niagara, which was a great event. And then so I also was at the other Haste and Hustle, and of course I was coming to the event that you had scheduled with Richard Branson, which was initially back in November, right?
It was originally scheduled for June 10th.
Oh wait, it was June.
Yeah, June.
And
then it was rescheduled for April 1st.
Right.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a hiccup with my dad's health last spring, and it just overwhelmed me. And I'm I have a very small team. I'm not, although my event itself is very large and well known and has kind of this international look to it, I still have a very lean, small team, and I'm still a small business, and I'm still a startup. So, when, personal issues or certain things, it can cause, more of a disruption than I'd like. So that was actually a good lesson for me, because it taught me to put a few things in place to make sure that if anything ever happened to me, or I had to deal with something personally, that wouldn't happen again. But unfortunately, we had to reschedule again because of coronavirus, and which is not, you never want to have to reschedule once, but to have to do it twice has been a bit unfortunate for sure.
Right. And I was looking so forward to that, and I'm still looking forward to it, because I know we will have it, but everything was being postponed. I had vendor tables at events coming up in March, April, and May.
Yeah.
And each one, kept being postponed, and everything has been now postponed till the fall.
Yeah.
So that's
sort of the standard right now, either the fall or into the new year. For the fall is for smaller events. Big events like mine are being asked to move into the new year. Like when you talk to government officials, that's what they recommend, because just the sheer number of people that we bring together is too hard. So
right. Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure some of these vendor events I have, some of them I don't know that they will go through in the fall, because of the size.
Yeah.
But I found it very challenging initially when everything started changing and everything was being postponed and then shut down, and tourist attractions were getting shut down, and then the NBA canceled the season or suspended the season. And then the NHL followed and all that, and the grocery store lines and the whole toilet paper thing. I found myself really getting consumed by the fear, and it was starting to affect me as well. So that's kind of why I started doing these interviews in the first place. But I'm sure it was similar for you because you are an events business and you put on live events. So
yeah, it was really, I mean, it's strange because just in February, I had been in South Africa. And I remember thinking how funny it was because even in South Africa, they were already testing, like with, they would take your temperature everywhere I went. Like I even walked across the border from Zimbabwe to Zambia and they took my temperature and noted it down and I had to show my, and then they put it next to my passport number and like it was recorded, right? And we weren't even doing that here at all. So where there was, or in the US or in the UK, because I went to all those places in the same period of time. And even the day they shut down the NBA and all that, I was in Chicago. I remember then that happened the day I landed in Chicago, and then the next day, Trudeau was announcing that they were shutting down the border, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. So I booked an early flight back, and still no testing. Nowhere. Like nothing. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness. But anyway, so then I self-quarantined for 14 days at that point. And the trick with that was, I live, my mom lives here and so does my son. So at least we have each other. So the quarantine is a little bit, I always feel worse for people who live on their own. But yes. I kind of went into this mode of like, holy smokes. Now, at this point, I'd already postponed my event because I'd been asked to. And that kind of had already taken place the week before. So I already had been working through all that. But then what started to happen is all my events for my other clients, which is really my bread and butter, all of a sudden just started to roll. So they all got postponed. None of them got canceled, thankfully. But the trick is that now all my events are either moved to the fall or early into the new year, and really it's still a loss. Like I always say to people, are like, well, at least you didn't really lose anything. Everything's just postponed. But the trick is that now I can't really book more events at that time. Normally I would book new events.
Yeah, you would have already had those. Plus
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's definitely a loss. Like I went from almost over $1 million in potential revenue for second and third quarter to zero in a matter of 2 weeks. And now I'm like, holy smokes, like I could not have predicted this. Even as I'm like in South Africa getting tested for the coronavirus, I would never have predicted it happening here. And it was only a couple of weeks later, right? And it just, I think everything happened so fast, and I was definitely sort of shocked. Like I just didn't know what to do. And I mean, we, my team and I, we sort of built out this online portal where people could come in and, we had different seminars, and we still do that. We were doing it 3 times a week, then we went to 2, and now we're actually just putting a slight pause on it for a couple of weeks, and we're restarting it in June, and it'll still be 2 times a week. So, or at least we're trying to add value. Like all I kept thinking was like, how can I serve my audience? I have an audience of entrepreneurs who are probably all struggling through all of this. Like, how can I serve them? What can I do? So my only thing I could do was offer an online forum for learning and educating and connecting, right? So I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to do. So we kept doing that. And, it's constantly trying to figure out how to pivot and how to still serve. But then, you can serve and serve and serve, but then it comes to, okay, well, I still need to make money now. Well, I make money through events and travel. And I'm like, so we're kind of up a creek at the moment trying to figure that out. Thankfully, I have a bit of a runway for myself. It's not like I'm in dire straits, and I do feel terribly for people who are struggling in a way that they can't, like I keep seeing businesses shutting down, and I just, it actually totally tears me up. I get really emotional about that stuff because I hate to see people fail. And I just know, like, every time a small business fails, that has such implications on every one of their staff members and their families. And, if you can think about the human element, it's upsetting, right? So I think for myself, where I've found a lot of peace and motivation and positivity is just not watching the news about it too often. I do check in every day just to kind of get a quick update, but I stay away from the news, and I stay away from the social media stories on it, especially the ones that are like kind of all over the map with whether it's a hoax and all this stuff. I just,
The conspiracies.
yeah, like I just, right now I'm like, I just need to focus on how I can serve people, how I can be, you know, how I can give back. And that's sort of where I've landed. And then at the same time though, totally finding new strategies for within my business to make sure that I'm not like in 6 months going, okay, well, I'm out of money now. You know, we're gonna have to shut down. So I don't ever want to be in that position. So I think
Right.
it's just, for me, I just took the time to get really clear, and I've been working with a coach on this, to get really clear on my mission and my vision and my community and how I want to be of service and what my ultimate goals are. And then focusing all my daily activities around that. So yeah, I think that's where I've pivoted. And I mean, for me, it ended up becoming a lot about virtual events. So I've done virtual events in the past, and my tech team has done a ton of them, and they're very, very good at them. So it wasn't a hard switch for me to say, okay, well, now we can offer virtual events. And I could say that with, you know, because there's a lot of people that will say, oh, okay, I'll just switch to virtual events, but they've never done them before. So at least I could say that I've had experience, my team has had a ton of experience, and we're going to switch and pivot here for a while. And that's actually working out. So I think when you find a place that you can serve and be kind and be a support to one another, to others, and to collaborate, and then getting really clear and focused in on your goals, then those are the two ways that I kind of fared through this so far.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And when you do say that when you were in South Africa and they were testing and things like that, you didn't expect it to come here. I can say I didn't expect it to come here either. As I was saying before we got on camera here, my daughter was supposed to go to Europe, and the trip was also hitting Italy, and they were talking about changing the itineraries, because then I saw things coming to Italy, but still, even when it was still coming to Italy, I kind of thought it would be a Europe thing, and I didn't think it would go past England. That was kind of the thing, like go across and then stop. So I never really thought it was going to come here to this extent either. I don't think anyone really did. And I think that was really what it was so much change so quickly.
Oh yeah.
And it was just such a loss of control for everybody.
Oh yeah, just watching the news every day and seeing, okay, this is shutting down and that is shutting down, and there's this many cases, and then there's exponentially more cases the next day. And yeah, it was a real shock to me. And you know, I thought, you know, even if it does come here, you know, we had SARS, we had H1N1, like we've had things in the past, and you know, I just never would have predicted this scenario of complete shutdown, isolation, you know, economic, you know, catastrophe essentially. And
yeah,
you know, like I thought, you know, if it does come here, we'll have some restrictions, maybe we won't be able to go to hospitals and visit our loved ones if we had to, or you know, like I that's sort of the extent,
kind of like it was when it was when SARS, you know, really.
Exactly. And so that's sort of all I thought. And then, you know, like I say, once I kind of came back, it started to get worse. And then obviously what happened, you know, we were one of the first events to make that call, one of the first few events to make the call on the postponement. But then within like a few days, then everyone was. It wasn't like a long, you know, it wasn't like we postponed and then months later everyone else did. It was like we did it, and then like a couple of days later you sort of saw the rest, and then a couple days after that they shut down the opportunity to do anything anyway. So it was just such a strange. I think about the timeline. And I remember standing on stage. I was actually on stage. It was the day before the Rachel Hollis event at the Sony Center, Meridian Hall. And she did an event like in early, when was it? Like early March. And so I was standing on the stage right the day before her event, because we were like scouting out the some of the things for our event, and we were just looking at the signage, and I had my tech team there and everything, and some of my sponsors, and we were all just standing on stage, and we said to each other, I'm like, can you imagine if anything happens where we have to postpone? And they were like, I don't think that's going to happen. And literally 4 days later, that's when we had to make the call. Like, it was such a quick thing. And so you're right. It's I think it's the significant change, as well as the swiftness of the change, that's just kind of like left everyone's head spinning. And I think for a long time it was, people were kind of like, oh, it's like a little bit of a vacation, and, the government's going to give us some money and we'll all be all right. And yeah, that's kind of a nice thing to think. But then now it's sort of like, all right, I'm so done with this. This is now like, we're forecasting sort of a 2-year significant impact on the economy and our business. So, now how do we really work within that? And no, this isn't a vacation. This is like hard work,
No, right. And when you go back to talking about serving everybody, my initial conversations with people with, the end of March, beginning of April, was serve your clients, reach out, see how everyone's doing, put out some content, educational stuff to help them, and put it all out. Don't worry about charging or anything like that. Just put out free content, and that's fine for a period of time.
Yeah.
But you can't sustain that, like you said. You can serve, but in the end, now we need to come up with different ways to do business, because even when things do reopen, everything's being reopened differently. I was just speaking with my hair stylist this morning, because I'm desperate, and
that's pretty darn good.
She's busy mixing up colors to she's mixing up the formulas to give to her clients so that they can do their own hair at home, at least for a temporary measure. But going forward, when we do reopen, for people like that, there's going to be such a limit on the number of clients that they can see in a day, and the number into the salon, plus all this cleaning she has to do on a regular basis, and the masks and the gloves and everything like that. No waiting chairs, and she can't sell anything retail anymore. Like, so many things have been imposed that even when she gets back to business, it's not going to be the same. It's significantly decreased, and which means her revenue is significantly decreased. So you need to we need to figure out some ways to, be creative in the business and work around these things. It's like you say, and she has no idea how long this is going to be, like this case. And same with the restaurant owners, same thing. When they open, it's going to be the same thing, reduced number of people allowed in, which means reduced revenue.
I know, and that's really the tragedy of it, that nobody really knows. But it's also the opportunity. And I think that, we can look at this and say, all right, woe is me, like, this sucks, I got to lose all revenue, and, we could sit around and live under a thundercloud our whole lives. But as entrepreneurs and as business owners, I think, I was saying to my sister today, actually, like, the name of the game is problem solving, and problem solving is a creative activity, right? And so, I mean, I know for me, like, the way that I've figured out a few new streams of revenue and a few new things to help keep my business going, I've just gotten really creative and collaborative. And so I found companies that, that I work with all the time, that I can say, all right, well, I'm going to bring you new customers because they're coming to me for this, that, and, I can't offer this, but I want to finder's fee or whatever it is, a commission. And so, you know, I've kind of got that happening, and I've got the virtual event stuff happening, and, you know, and I've definitely, and we've got the Hustle from Home online series, which right now is free. However, we will be eventually putting up a pay gate for it. But the thing is, I think collaborating and finding people even within your own industry and saying, how can we help each other? Because you know, ultimately I think that's what we need. And so I find that to be a little bit of a silver lining, because it changes the way we view competition. And I think that if we can view competition less as like, if I win, you lose, or you win, I lose, instead of looking at it that way and saying, okay, if we both win, we both win, you know, and say, how do we help each other both win? And that's always been sort of how I've always viewed anything, because I never look at other event planners and say, oh man, you've got way more clients than me. I must be so awful. It's not that at all. I think, you know, I get so happy for, you know, people within my industry and say, oh, they've done so well, they're winning these awards. Good for them. They have earned it. They deserve it. They've worked really hard for that, and they've implemented strategies. How can I learn from them? Or vice versa. And I just think that it hopefully will shift some of the ways we view competition and the way we support one another. And if we can treat each other with a bit of grace. I wrote this post today about, you know, being gracious with each other. And I think that, you know, as a way to find some positivity in this whole scenario is, you know, looking at everyone and saying every single person is going through something differently in the back end, or they're, you know, expressing it, or it's triggering things differently in them, or they're not handling it the best, or they're handling it great, or however they're handling it. But instead of judging anyone's reaction or anyone's way of doing things, just saying, all right, we are all going through something that is completely seen. No one's ever seen anything like this or been through this. It happens so fast, and we're all just kind of reacting as best that we can, and saying, you know, just sort of having that grace and saying, you know what, I did not like the way they handled that, but it is the way they handled it, and, you know, let's give them a little bit of grace and say just assume, you know, I always assume that people are just trying to figure it out, and maybe it didn't work, maybe it did. And, you know, and then if you see somebody really struggling, go to them, offer to support, offer to say, you know, like, you know, I can help you figure this out, or I don't know, like, there's just so many ways that we can, as a human race, be supportive of one another, be kind to each other, be gracious with one another, and just give each other a moment to figure this out, because that's what we really need. And if we can instill some of those qualities into ourselves and into our businesses, I think we'll all eventually come out the other side and go, you know what, we're a much nicer group of people, you know? And that's what I would like to see. But I'm such an idealist, so who knows?
No, I agree. You know, the world before this was just so divisive, and so many people ready to have arguments all the time if you didn't agree with whatever they were saying, and we were just rushing and with no focus, really. Just as I was talking to somebody yesterday, basically we were kind of existing, as opposed to actually being. And now you've got the chance to reevaluate things and look at things in a different light, and decide who you want to be going forward. And I think that we have seen a lot of people come together as a community, helping one another. There has been a lot of that judgment going through as well, and also our own self-judgment. You know, like when you might have a day that you just can't get anything done. You just want to sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day. You need to give yourself grace to just do that as well, because the emotions that we're going through with something like this is, you know, we need to acknowledge your emotions, not try to push them away. and just don't stay there, right?
Yeah.
If you want to, you know, give yourself grace to, you know, because it's really hard to, it's really easy to start judging yourself because there's so much you can do with all the people offering so many, like there's so much online that it kind of gets a bit overwhelming with everybody offering their different webinars and different things to learn. And you feel like you got to get all this stuff done, but at the same time you need to give yourself the grace to sit back and, you know, listen to your body.
Yeah, I know. I was reading, I posted this article in on my Facebook yesterday, and is basically a whole article like going through all the psychological changes that we've as a kind of culture been going through all of this. And it was really interesting because it actually shifts within your brain. It shifts like your chemical reactions, and it's causing like almost like this constant state of traumatic stress. And we're because and they were talking about how it's not the actual situation, it's the uncertainty of the future. And they were comparing it to a study they had done with women who had been diagnosed with cancer. When they were waiting for their diagnosis, their stress hormones were so much higher than when they actually got diagnosed with cancer. And so what they were saying is that the uncertainty is really the cause of major stress. And because we're living in a day-to-day uncertainty, we're experiencing this traumatic stress. And because I was worried why I was so tired all the time, like certain days I just get so tired, like I've never been a napper or anything, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I just need to nap, and I'll nap for like 4 hours. Like it's, you know, it's ridiculous. And so they're saying, you know, we have to be gracious with one another because we're all going through this traumatic stress. And I thought that was really interesting, and I liked that they could kind of assign a little bit of a psychology to it, but also that the reminder is just to be nice to each other, you know, like just and to yourself. And
yes.
you know, and I know for myself yesterday I was feeling that way. I was just like, I need to take a day. I took a total day off yesterday. I didn't even look at my computer. I was sorting through old pictures with my mom, and we were kind of reminiscing, and I was reading, and I went for a walk, and I feel so good today because I allowed myself the time, and I didn't feel guilty about it. I just knew I needed it. And now I'm back to being productive and normal and whatever. But I think you're totally right when you say that. So yeah, just feel okay to do that for sure.
Yeah. And I was like that on the weekend as well. I ended up just I had to lay down and have a nap, which I never do as well. But it just felt like it, I that's what it is, I guess, like you're saying, the uncertainty is, and it's continuing the uncertainty because we don't know. And so it just keeps, you know, staying there. And when you go back to what you were saying about the news, I initially was watching news because everything was changing and everything was being shut down. And I haven't watched any of the updates or anything like that in weeks now. And I find it made a huge difference when you're not watching it. And it's easy enough to know what's happening. You know, you can look up on your phone, and it's easy enough to find out what you're supposed to do.
I know, and I like the news typically. Like, I don't like all the negative news. I enjoy I do like to know what's going on in the world. But, you know, I found that what was happening is that we weren't learning about what was happening in the world. We were literally learning about thing, you know? And yes, it was impacting everyone in the world at the time. But I was like, can I just hear, you know what I started watching is that John Krasinski's show, The Some Good News. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't, but
it's on YouTube. It's just called Some Good News, and it makes me cry with happiness. I just love it. It's so funny. He's that actor from The Office, and he does this great show, and it basically is just like a show sort of every day, every week he does it, and it just sort of like shows people helping people, people like doing funny, nice things for other people, and it's literally just like good news stories. And that like really cheers me up. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find that kind of content and enjoying that, because the news can be depressing.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, that's one thing I do miss as well, is each morning when I would get up, I'd usually put on CP24 to kind of see, and they would talk about different things happening in Toronto, and they'd have little, they'd be talking to different people as well and have guests on. And of course, not so, not anymore. Now it's everything is, there's only one topic on the news now. So, so I haven't turned that on for like 6 weeks at least, maybe, 7 weeks. So I kind of miss that a little bit. Plus at night, I used to watch sometimes in bed, and on CP24 they had Hot Property, and it was about real estate, and I used to listen to that because I just was interested in that. And again, I don't put that on anymore, so that I kind of miss. But
head over to YouTube and go to Some Good News. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. I will do that as well. So and like, this is the time definitely to be creative. Things are going to change. I think everybody's embraced Zoom and other video technology. Going forward, I think we're going to see some more online events.
For sure. And I think, I did this webinar for our Hustle from Home series called How to Pivot Your Business. And one of the key things that I, kind of drilled home is that, when you think about a pivot, in basketball, your foot always stays in one area and then your other foot moves around to help you find a better shot, right? So I wanted to remind people that as you're pivoting and as you're looking for creative ways to explore new paths in your business, don't forget to keep your goals the same. Like if your goal my goal is to serve and support entrepreneurs with inspiration and education and connection. So those are my number one goals within my Haste and Hustle business, right? And so I'm not going to change those goals just because everything's changing. I'm just going to pivot the pathway to those goals. So I think, because what I'm finding is a lot of people are just like completely switching things they're doing, like completely. And I think don't lose sight of what you really want to do in this world, how you really want to serve your people, and maybe, and just stay focused on your goals and make sure you're super clear, and you will get through it. I think we need to keep reminding each other that we are all going through this together, and we all will get through it. We just have to find some new ways. We have to get creative. We have to get collaborative. And we have to find ways to serve. And if we can do all of those things, we really will get through it. And it's not to say that we won't have hard days. It's not to say that it won't be more work at times, and we won't have tears and days we don't do anything, and, on and on. But if the end result can be the same, and if you're and if your energy still gets applied to the same goals, you'll figure it out. And I just wanted to get that message of hope for people, because it really is out there, and we really can do it. And if your business is going to fail, or it is, you do have that real challenge that could happen to any of us, I just want people to know that it's not a personal failure. This is an unbelievably hard event, or hard experience, circumstance. And, I worry about people going through that, because that's really hard. And I just don't want people to feel almost like the indictment of others, because no one is going to judge anybody who's in that situation. And I would hope that people would reach out, and I would like to offer myself in that situation, reach out if you're going through that, even if you still have to, or if you've already gone through it, just know that people are here to support you.
Exactly. Yes. We're all going through different things. We are still all together going through this, and everybody, from what I can see, people do want to support each other
Yeah.
And going back to what you were saying about competition and things like that, I think we'll see a lot more collaborations going forward. And the fact is, back to what you were saying, if you're just if we all do well, we'll all do well together.
Yep.
And everybody will rise together, and that's how that's how it'll be. And going forward, I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. And even now, that's also a good way to approach this, is collaboration, and see what you can do together with people.
And
in your same industry. And
I would say approach it from a place of service, and the business comes. Like, it's just, if you can approach it that way, because when you start to serve people, it definitely edifies your own soul. And then you automatically start seeing, it sort of like elevates your vibration, not to get too woo-woo, but it elevates you in a way that you can't really see visibly, and then it opens you up to opportunities for business too. So I know for myself, anytime I've seen any sort of success in business, and for myself and for others that I know, it always starts in service and it works into business. And and I think that especially right now, people need to be served and serve.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's definitely so true. All right. Well, thank you, Shauna. I think that's a good way to end this off. So I will put your information underneath this interview as well, so that people know where to find Haste and Hustle, and for these events that you're going forward with.
Thank
you. Sorry, I had just lost my train of thought for a second there. But so I will put your information, and thank you so much for spending the time with me.
My pleasure.
I think that the fact that we are all, the whole global community is going through this all at the same time, that we are really going to emerge as much better, more kind and compassionate human beings going forward. And we will also be kinder to the earth as well. I think that's something that going forward. All right, so thank you again, and I will look forward to when we see each other in person.
Yeah, sounds great. I look forward
to that. Hopefully not too long.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, and thank you, everybody.